Yep.
I'll be bugging. I like the Ollie
Yeah.
background, Leo.
Thank you very much.
Looks really cool, mate.
First time I use it. First time I use it.
Cause there's no need to explain. I know what you wanna say. Could you say goodnight if you think that's alright? There's no need to explain. I know that we can make. Can we get up and try to feel okay again?
Okay.
I'm getting too close. You say you love me most. It's hard to trust it even though I want to. Need to get this shit out of my head before I flip this on myself instead. Please come over here.
Good afternoon, everyone, including PMC and PMEA members and our marketing partners. Welcome to the fourth in our new series of webinars. My name is Roger Dimmel, and I hope that you have an enjoyable and informative time with us today. Just before we get going, I would like to mention and thank our valued marketing partners, for without these companies' assistance, this webinar would not be possible. Our supporting partners: Hexagon, All Light Sykes, Line X, Intertech, Kaiser, Major Drilling, Hutatech, Resource Cons, Index, Drillcorp, Ali Consulting. Our foundation partners are Weir Minerals. Weir Minerals delivers end-to-end solutions for all mining, transportation, milling, processing, and waste management activities. David Brown, Santasalo. David Brown Gear Systems Philippines, Inc. supplies of industrial gear products and aftermarket maintenance services to the Philippine mining industry. Site Work Ready. Site Work Ready offers international recruitment and workforce solutions to companies in the mining and processing, oil and gas, and construction industries. Our principal partners are Ostai Geophysical Consultants, advice and guidance for geophysical exploration programs being carried out in the mining and metal sector, as well as the coal sector. Ostai Geophysical Consultants also provide a wide range of services to the environmental, groundwater, and engineering industries. QED, Quest Exploration Drilling, Asia's leading exploration drilling company. Modern equipment with well-trained staff has elevated QED to become the benchmark for international standard drilling operations in terrain that is generally typified by logistical constraints, geological complexity, and topographical extremes. GHD. GHD has had a permanent presence in the Philippines since 1998, with over 600 professional staff spread over 3 cities in the Philippines, their main office in Makati, and 2 branches now in Cebu City and Quezon City. Focused on creating lasting community benefit, GHD leverages on its connected global network of 10,000 employees to provide engineering and environmental management services to key players in the energy and resource sectors. Our industry partners, TBI Resource Development, Agata Nickel, and Oceana Gold. We thank them for their ongoing support. We are also affiliated with the Melbourne Mining Club, ANSCHAM, the Australian and New Zealand Chamber of Commerce, PMEA, the Philippine Mining and Exploration Association, COMP, the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines, PIMSEA, the Philippine Mine Safety and Environment Association, and Yaman Philippines. Our media partner is the Philippine Resource and Construction Journal. Ladies and gentlemen, may I say a few words about our MC today? For people who have been in the mining industry, our MC needs no introduction. Suffice to say that Leo is a recognized figure and a friend to the Philippine mining industry and is a man of many talents and responsibilities. A lawyer by training, Leo was previously a partner at Cusimbing Torres, a member firm of Baker and McKenzie International, where he headed its energy, mining, and infrastructure practice group. He retired from that law firm in 2010, and soon after set up a consulting firm called Ali Consulting Group, Inc., of which he is president and principal. Ali Consulting Group, Inc. provides high-level advice on strategy, finance, and business development in the industries of agriculture, mining, infrastructure, renewable energy, food, beverage, and packaging, and hospitality and tourism, among others. Ladies and gentlemen, I will now hand you over to our MC, Attorney Leo Dominguez.
Thank you very much, Roger, and welcome all of you to the 4th webinar of the Philippine Mining Club. Before we proceed to our speakers, I wish to highlight the following. Number 1, we will be issuing certificates of attendance to all the attendees, and you can request a copy of that certificate from Joan Falcutella. Her email address is joan@philippineminingclub.com. Second, a conference called Mining Investment Asia will be held on November 2 to 4, 2020 in Singapore. For information and to register, visit the website mininginvestmentasia.com. I repeat, mininginvestmentasia.com. Third, for your questions addressed to our speakers, kindly type them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. I will then read them out to our speakers after their presentations during the Q&A. Lastly, we will hold the Q&A after both speakers have made their presentations. Allow me now to introduce our next presenter, who will give us a talk called the Stock Market Update. He is a financial analyst working to educate clients of the stockbroker firm First Metro Securities. He used to teach finance in college for undergraduates and for MBA students. Ladies and gentlemen, I now present to you Sandy Gilles.
Oh, thank you very much, Leo, and good afternoon to everybody. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I asking Job Bullas to please share the screen for me to say a few words about the share price of Bluebird Merchant Ventures, which is listed on the London Stock Exchange. Here is the 1-year price chart for BMV, and last April, the share price went from 1.5 pounds to about 3 to 4 pounds and has settled recently at 3.75. We're hoping to learn what the good news was last April, and I'm hoping that we can get some more information to be able to estimate what future good news might come up in the next 6 months or 12 months, possibly leading to another price rally, hopefully. Next slide, please. The Korean economy is going to be -1 this year in GDP growth. As for the stock market, they have erased their losses in the first half of the year. Next slide, please, Job. You'll see that the share prices following the yellow line dipped heavily in March 2020. But since those companies are very competitive and high technology, they were able to recover quickly because their services, their high-tech services, were among those which were highly sought after in the COVID era. So they were well adjusted for future demands and requirements. We're hoping that they manage to keep that rally momentum upwards. Next slide, please. So there, if you wanted to buy Korean mining stocks, then you could select them from the long list. Or if you are totally unfamiliar with the Korean stock market, I would suggest to take the top 30, the 30 largest stocks, or possibly the members of their index, the Korean KOSPI index. Next slide, please. Now, both approaches are actually good. You can buy stocks individually, one by one, which simply requires some research or getting some good advice. Or you could buy a whole bunch of stocks, a collection, so that if one stock should go down, at least the other stocks in the bunch may still be up. So therefore, it gives you some protection against any one extreme movement downhill. The rest of them should be okay, perhaps one or two of them moving upwards very well. Next slide, please. So then, in order to be able to buy a stock individually on your computer or your cell phone device, you simply open a brokerage account with any stockbroker, international or Korean, and use their service to be able to convert your money into shares of Korean stocks. Or you can buy Korean mutual funds or investment funds. That's what you call a whole bunch of stocks. Next slide, please. Now, if you wanted to simply copy the national top 30 in Korea or that country, that kind of fund is normally called an index fund because it just tracks the movement of the top 30 or top 50 stocks. It's a very good strategy, especially if you're unfamiliar with the movements of individual stocks. Now, there are other investment funds which try to outdo the national top 30, and they normally go by the name of equity fund or aggressive equity fund. Next slide, please. So therefore, where do you actually buy the fund? If you're buying an investment fund or an index fund, most of them can be subscribed by going to their office. But there's a small number of funds which are listed on the stock exchange so that you can simply get an account from any broker, and then from the comfort and convenience of your own computer at home or from your own device, then you can press a button and buy an investment fund from the stock exchange, in which case it's called an exchange traded fund or ETF. Next slide, please. So that's the meaning of the term ETF. It's an exchange traded fund. It's a fund that you can buy online. There's no need to go to their office to line up and manually subscribe. Next slide, please. Over here in the Philippines, I consult for First Metro Securities, where you can open a broker account online or just email them and they can guide you. Next slide, please. But we're looking forward to the talk for today. What were the fortunes of Bluebird Merchant Ventures in the past year? What was the good news last April? And what possibly good news events could we be awaiting for the next 6 months or the next 12 months? Thank you very much for listening, and have a nice afternoon.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Allow me now to say a few words about our two speakers today. These two gentlemen have been working together since the 1980s on reopening and establishing new mines in numerous countries around the world. But particularly in the Australasia and East Asia areas. Their focus and passion have primarily been the reopening of gold mines. Both are based in Manila and have, over the years, built up an informal team of experts that contribute to the projects as and when required. The mantra is to have fun whilst creating value for the company, but to be perfectly honest, the harsh treatment by the Philippines government and having to move the projects ahead on a basis of hand to mouth has not been fun in the past few years. To speak to us on the topic, rebirthing the dormant South Korea gold mines, let me call on Colin Patterson and Charles Barclay. Over to you first, Colin.
Thanks, Leo. That's a good introduction. Yeah, we do try to have some fun, but never actually always works out that way. But at the end of the day, the party's worth it. So let me bring the presentation onto the screen and we can get going. I trust everyone can see that.
Yes, thank you. We can see it.
Excellent, thanks. Okay, so today's presentation, our outline, I will give you a very brief corporate summary. Then Charlie will move on to what we do and how we do it. He will then talk about our Batangas project in Philippines. I know we said it was going to be the rebirthing of South Korea, but we can't forget about our little loved project down in Batangas. We then move on to South Korea, where Charlie will talk quite a lot about that, I imagine. And I'll wrap it up thereafter. And obviously after that, we'll have questions. So just to make everyone quite clear, we are listed on the London Standard Market. Thanks, Sandy, for the explanation on the South Korean market. If you want to invest in us, go to the London market. That's where we are. Our market capitalization at the moment is around $20 million US, and our share price isn't £4, it's 4 pence. So we're still a penny horrible company, but nevertheless, we will one day be a really top class mining company. Our key assets are 2 projects in South Korea, the Gubong and the Kochang projects, and of course, our Batangas project. So you may, well, as was pointed out by Sandy, our share price jumped recently, and that was mainly because we have had offers of finance, but also just very recently, we announced to the market that there's a very clear legal process with our partners, Southern Gold, an Australian listed company, to acquire their shares in the next couple of months. This is our share price virtually since inception. As you can see, it started right up here. This is when we only had Batangas. We didn't have South Korea at all. This plummet here, commonly known as the Gina plummet, was for obvious reasons of, let's say, less than friendly attitudes towards mining in the Philippines. It was a sad time. Many people who were working for us at the time lost their jobs, and I believe the communities in Batangas lost out a lot. We then started looking for other projects, and lo and behold, we found the projects in South Korea, thanks to Doug Kerwin. All acknowledgement must go to him for working with us and helping us find that. So we've had a bit of a bumpy road along the way, and then this is when this little drop here coming down here was the COVID scare that everyone got. But at about that point there, the market became aware that we were getting funding in place, and I think people started realizing that we were going to go places. Over to Charlie.
Thanks, Col. Hope everybody can hear me and I'm not on mute or anything silly like that.
Yeah,
So,
you're fine.
our business model, as has been stated, over the years we have reopened many old mines for various companies and for ourselves. And the one thing that we have found is that old mines can be refurbished pretty cheaply and brought back into production, utilizing production that was left behind years ago because of, quite simply, the price of gold at the time. When Doug highlighted the possibilities in South Korea to us, we couldn't have asked for a bigger lead, because there are over 1,400 closed gold mines in South Korea, and the history of gold mining in Korea, which I'll come on to later, makes them quite attractive. Our targets, because we're looking at refurbishing old mines, are normally old underground gold mines, because the gold mines don't get exhausted of gold. It's open pits, yes, to a large extent can be exhausted, but I have never, in my 45 years in gold mining, seen a underground gold mine that didn't have gold left in it. And because we are looking at the old gold mines, we don't have to look for very expensive exploration drilling. It's already been done. The old timers have shown us where the gold is. We just have to go and expand on what they had then. So in evaluating any target that we find, there's a wealth of information for us to assess its potential. There's all the old production results. There's the cost and price elements at the time of the mine's closing. There's the mining methods that were used at the time. There were the processing methods, and many other elements that you can, over a period of 4, 5, 6 months, you can determine a picture of what the mine looked like when it was operating. So that's basically how we look for the mines. In terms of our vision, well, we'd like to create a pipeline in South Korea of 100,000 ounces per annum over 5 years, and let that be maintained. We all think we're probably a little bit too old in the tooth to look for longer than that. Colin mentioned our Batangas project, which is what we started on. And even there, the old mine, thanks Colin, which slide am I actually going to be on at the moment?
I'm looking for the Batangas heading, but I can't find it. Sorry, it must have been hidden.
Right. So the Batangas project, as it says, in Batangas, but it was a project being run by an Australian company at the time, and we met up with the founder of Bluebird, and we did a deal at the time to take on part of the project down in Lobo. It fitted, believe it or not, our modus operandi, because Lobo itself used to be underground. There are Japanese workings down there as well. So it all fitted as part of what we were looking for. Unfortunately, the political atmosphere as regards mining in the Philippines was not good. And we walked right slap bang into Gina Lopez, and in fact she basically closed us down. The people that we met, Jeff Boswell, who had been running the project for a long time and who knows it very well, and I must give him credit for a couple of photographs we've got in here of the project. I've been working on it for a long time. There's a lot of good information. There's a good resource there. There are many ways of mining it, and hopefully, if things improve in the Philippines in terms of people wanting miners to come back, well, that is definitely our next cab off the rank. It's also interesting to note that, you know, when you look at what mining means to the Philippines, and I'm not sure of my data here, I'm sure many of you can give much more accurate figures, but I was quoted a few years ago when I was asking about the potential of GDP of the mining industry in the Philippines, and I was told that somewhere back in the 60s and 70s it was around about 17%. And I went along with another quote, which was apparently from a president, and I would hate to badmouth any president, so I won't give the name, but I think it was a president about 3 presidents ago, who said, why would I bother with an industry that is less than 1% of GDP? Which to me is a clear indication of what the potential of the mining industry is in this country right now, and what a pity it is that it's not being pushed to the hill when this country needs all the jobs and all the wealth that it can generate. Anyway, that's it. That same GDP question can now be taken across to Korea, because in Korea it's a different story altogether. They have got a very, very low GDP, as has the Philippines, but they want to increase the GDP aspect of mining in Korea. The Korean gold industry itself is laden with atrocious conditions and a history of bad working. From the time that the Japanese ruled Korea, 1928 through to the end of the Second World War, virtually all the gold mines were Japanese companies or Japanese sympathizers. During this time, the reports on production are not considered to be 100%. You can see some of the years in the beginning were quite good, but nothing spectacular, and then down to virtually nothing, and then during the 50s and 60s, it increased a little bit more. The story goes that in 1943, the Japanese decided to stop all gold mining in Korea. They needed metals, copper, iron, manganese, whatever. So they compensated the Japanese operators to stop gold mining and start their crews mining other materials. In our research into the industry in Korea, when we first got there, we actually unearthed a one-page working of how much one miner was paid for one of the mines. It was $500,000 just to stop mining and go and work elsewhere. So After the war, mining was a dirty word, especially gold mining, and Korea just settled into its lifestyle, and then changed in the 50s, wanting to become more industrial and had all the industrial might, and then it changed its focus to digital and technology, and we know how brilliant they've been at that. And now they're looking again at resources, and they're wishing to, especially in terms of gold, iron, that sort of metal, they are wishing to push that and get their own homegrown minerals up to scratch. So it's changing. So whereas GDP in the Philippines is down at the bottom and not really going to go anywhere, the GDP in South Korea is going to go pretty much up as fast as they can make it happen. So we've got two projects. They're both commercially very robust. The one, Gubong, is a mine that was the second largest mine in the country from 1955 to 1967. And the Koche mine was a very high grade, small tonnage mine, not a large operation, but those are the two that we chose. We also have some strategic partners involved with us for many years. I've worked with Perry Rezabal, who you'll all know, and his company, Paramina and Petty, have been involved with myself and Colin over the last 25 years in various projects. And it's probably one of the biggest shames of the poor old mining industry here is that there is such a wealth of experience in mining, especially the more smaller styles of mining, that it's just, there's no outlet for it except to go overseas. And we're very happy to go overseas with them. And I've worked with Paramina in particular in 4 different countries in the last 20 years. So we have them. Doug Kerwin, we have mentioned. We have, who have I forgotten, Colin? Want to jump in there?
Well, we've got a good bunch of Filipinos who have worked with us, Emmy Fabro, and of course the teams that Perry provide for us, which we'll see pictures of later on in the presentation.
Okay, so let's move on. The strategy for production. Now, because we're reopening old gold mines, one of the first things that we do when we go underground is we're looking for the resource that we like, which is broken ore, lying on the ground, running at gold grades that we can just take out and put into a facility and extract the gold. Every single mine, when people leave it, they do not go around and clean it with a toothbrush and leave it spotlessly clean. There is always copious amounts of rock available for processing. So that's what we first look for. Then we also look at the drain systems, the tracks, how much mud is on them, how much is that running at. Normally always running at 0.5 gram to 1.5 grams, something like that, but lots of that. So just in cleaning up the old rock, you are producing gold. So that's one of the first things that we analyze. Then it's remnants left behind, where the development is still open and still standing. We can go and remove the remnants. Again, we can sample those and we start to make an in-house inventory of how many ounces we've got. all the time you're building up a picture of what this mine looked like, where it was going, where it decided it didn't want to go, and we can review it and come up with a plan. In Korea, we've got a plan at the moment to move the smaller mine along as fast as we can, and then that's Kochang, and then we will, as that moves along, we will have opened up more of Gubong. Gubong is a much bigger mine. It has a lot more potential going forward than Kochang seems to have at the moment. I say seem because we've only been there for a year, so we don't really have all the answers to our questions. Because we've got dirt to process, and because we've already got some idea of how much there is there, and because we have been able to do metallurgical test work, we are able to generate a capital plan to bring ourselves into production, which is very, very cheap. The reason it is that cheap, when you compare it to a small project that is just, should I say, greenfield project, cut out all the exploration. It's unnecessary to start with. So you've got a huge leap forward to start with. Then when it comes to the development, we have got adits into a hill that we would necessarily have to put there if they weren't there. They're there and they're open. We've already opened over 4 kilometers of tunnels. And those of you in the business today will know that, you know, a meter of 2.5 by 2.5 end, or 3 meter by 3 meter, is going to cost you well over $3,500 a meter just in consumables. So all that is already done for you. So it's extremely cheap. The other thing is that tunnels that have been developed over the years generally stay open. They do not all collapse. Otherwise, we wouldn't have people going around the world caving. So all the tunnels are open. So all those costs come off the top. I think we've done enough of the history, but in terms of Gubong, the Gubong history is very interesting, and there's a couple of slides later, but Gubong was the second largest mine in the country, and it had a system of 4 sub-incline shafts and a small vertical shaft from the top. What you're looking at on the slide at the moment is Gubong today, and the white wall is the 1985 project done by Morocco, the Mines Reclamation Division that was set up in Korea. Very interesting. It's a government organization. They were set up to reclaim environmentally, make environmentally sound some areas. They've been doing it for many, many years. There's not much left that they need to do now. However, they are an organization which, if we are mining and we put in initiatives to make sure water is clean, or that we don't overspill tailings, or this, that, and the other, they are prepared to come in and sponsor some 70% of the construction, depending on the project, of course. So you've got to have a good project. So that was their wall in 1985. With the right-hand side of the picture, where the wall ends, that is where the one shaft system is, which was the original shaft system. And to the left-hand side of the screen, where the wall ends, about 100 yards from where the wall ends, on that first tier above the wall, is the other vertical shaft. Now, this vertical shaft on the left of the picture, which you'll, I think, can we move on, Colin? Move one forward. And this picture here, taken by KTV in 1967. Now you can see on the left there, although it's very dark, there's the vertical shaft I'm talking about. That vertical shaft was put in by the mining company to replace the 4 sets of underground incline shafts. Obviously, running 4 sets of incline shafts is extremely expensive, and they put in this vertical shaft. We can't find the date as to when that was put in. However, in 1967, it collapsed, and this footage is from 2 days after it collapsed. And it was taken by the US and Korean TV people, because halfway down the shaft, a Korean pump man was trapped in his pump station. The whole mine was brought to a standstill by a presidential decree, and it took 15 days for the guys to get him out of the shaft. And I have to report that as of last year in September, the guy was still alive. I was still trying to interview him, but unfortunately he's now 90 something, and his wife said that he was too ill to be interviewed. But he was brought out of the mine safely, but in doing that, the mine also had utilized most of its cash resources, and 2 years later, after having tried to reinstall or refurbish the underground incline shafts, they went out of business. So we got an awful lot of information about this mine from this one incident. And now we know that it closed in 1971. You all know what the gold price was in 1971. And we also get a lot of information. This slide here shows you some of our exploration without putting holes in the ground. We've got a picture of the shaft from a local museum, historical papers from the local museum. Very little, indeed. I mean, if it was mines in the Philippines, you'd probably find so much information that you'd drown in it. The plan that you see there on the screen is was the original plan that we could find of the old mine, and we actually digitized that and stuck it on a Google image of the area to start ourselves off. Other than that, if we can move on to the next slide, the local people. The young lady on the right, who was Miss Gubong, 1928, she was still quite furious at the mine, because she said where she was pointing, that's where water came out of the mine, and that's where she used to do all the washing of the clothes and everything when she was a youngster. So she told us that's where the entrance to the mine was. The guy on his haunches in the other photograph, he thought it was somewhere slightly different. Nevertheless, they were all not too far out of the picture, but the one thing that they didn't tell us, and it took quite a while to work out, was that in fact they had raised the level of the ground in 1985 when they put the containment wall in. They'd raised the level of the ground by some 3 meters in the whole valley. And so we were always looking for something that was below us and not going into a hill in front of us. However, we did eventually find, I'd like to introduce one of our contract workers. As you can see, he's got a LHD and in his hands. That was the first day we gave it to him. I think 6 days later we had to throw it away because he'd broken it. But we all had a go at it, and Perry seemed to enjoy it most. Next to him is another Paramina employee who came over to Korea by the name of Jimmy, and he was a dab hand at going down this shaft. This is the shaft that you saw on the previous slide on the hillside. This is in fact that shaft, and it was a concrete line shaft, and the picture on the left shows you the shaft in pretty good condition. Rails are gone, but the spillage is still there, and we stuck a ladder down it and put our little headgear there so that we could get up and down the shaft. Unfortunately, at the bottom of the shaft there's some water, and that's where we are stuck today, and that's one of our next jobs to get into the main part of the mine. But certainly the top of the hill around Gubong we've been into from all these little holes that we have been able to find. Okay. Colin, I think that's his conclusion.
Thanks a lot, Charlie. So I think it's worth again thanking our partners in crime, as Paramina and Perry and the guys there from Petty have done a lot with us, and we can only thank them for everything they've done. And by the way, it was Paramina Petty that got me involved with Apex Mining way back in 2009. And for those that know the story, we purchased that from Crew Gold Mining and turned that around, and it ultimately has ended up in the hands of Ricky Rozon's company. We're very proud of what we did there, getting that project up and running. Also, again, to acknowledge Doug Kerwin again. He has been an amazing person in helping us establish ourselves in South Korea. And of course, Jeff Boswell, who he's Mr. Batangas. He knows anything and everything that's ever happened in Batangas, and we have great respect for him. As you heard in my opening statement, we have funding offers, so we believe that we will certainly be able to put this in, and the funding offers to date are non-equity, so we won't get diluted, which is one of the reasons why our shareholders love it. And we do have alternatives just in case that one doesn't come through. So we're pretty happy that once we acquire the full 100% of the projects, we'll be able to fund the whole lot going forward. As Charlie mentioned, the capital to get the projects in South Korea is extremely low. It's and I don't think we could have done it in any other country, such as Australia or Canada or America or Europe or such like that. It's using what I regard as the Filipino model of getting mines up and running, and we will get this going, and the economics that we run on it is very robust. Doesn't matter. I think our gold price break even, Charlie, please jump in. It's certainly well below $1,000, probably closer to about 500. Charlie, if you want to just jump in and tell me what the break even gold price is, but it is low. It's very low. And certainly Batangas, we still love Batangas very much, and we really look forward to one day returning to the Philippines with all we've learned and applied in South Korea, and use that experience in getting Batangas up and running to benefit the communities down there, to benefit the economy of the Philippines, which, as we all know, is taking one hell of a knock with COVID. We'd be very proud to be able to help do our little bit to help the country fight this scourge that they have, or the downturn in the economy. Charlie, are you still there, Charlie? He must be muted.
Yes, the host was keeping me muted.
Well done, host. I've got a lot of respect for you.
Yeah, I think your question was, what's the break-even price of making gold? It's not going to drop that much. What's far more impactful is that the gold price, since we did our first run at $1,100 an ounce and said, wow, this is a good project for us, and gold is now over $1,900, and it's only about 2 years ago. So really, it's the margins that have gone shooting up. But from the point of view of producing gold is still going to cost somewhere between $700 and $800 an ounce at a cost one level.
Thanks, Charlie, and thank you everyone for listening to us. I've seen a number of questions pop up, and I think Attorney Leo is going to read them out. I assume you're going to filter the ones out that rubbish us.
I will do that. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Colin and Charles. Very interesting to hear about South Korea. I mean, one never really thought about South Korea as a major gold producer, but I imagine it must have been quite busy when the Japanese were there. In your presentation, Colin, or was it Charles, there was a comment that it was not a cakewalk to operate in Korea. What would you say is what makes it not a cakewalk in South Korea to do mining?
I think probably my question, that one. Firstly, the two huge benefits that you have in the Philippines. One, expertise in mining, in all forms and all sizes of mining. Doesn't exist in Korea. Right? So you're dealing with a training program that you have to start very early. Secondly, most people in the Philippines, if they aren't completely versatile in English, do try. Whereas in Korea, there is no English. Very, very minimal. In fact, if you were to look at Korea, which is a first world nation with first-class infrastructure, I defy anybody to go and find such good infrastructure in the countryside of their country. We had sealed roads up to 50 meters away from the entrance to our mines. Internet there, right on the spot. Power within 150 meters of anywhere you want to be. It's all there. So the big drawbacks are communication and experience. The more traditional ones are, whilst you are told that the system is a one-stop shop, it's not quite that. And although it did not take anywhere near as long as it had taken in other jurisdictions, it certainly, because of the language barrier, it does take a lot of time and effort.
I'd like to add to those comments from Charlie on the more positive side of it. In Korea, the government don't take any royalty, which is very unusual in the world today, where a government doesn't take royalty for mining. It also, Charlie was mentioning, I think, in his talk about if we go and build a wetland or something that is good for the environment, they will contribute, I think, up to 80% of that project. things like drilling, particularly for white space macro drilling, they will come in and subsidize that. Also, I think it's to about 80% of that as well. So they're doing a lot of things in Korea to encourage people like ourselves to go there and establish ourselves. But yeah, as was said there, it's not a cakewalk. It does take intense concentration and focus on what you're doing, so you don't get waylaid one way or the other.
Thank you for that. That's very interesting, Colin. I have a couple of questions that have come in on the chat box. This one is from Joey Ison. Considering that a DMPF has been announced for Lobo, what is the next move?
Do you want me to take that, Charlie, or do you want to do that?
I'm happy to pass the buck to you.
Well, it's a good question, and it's an excellent question. As I said, Batangas really is a love of our life. We love the project, we love the people, we love the community. But unfortunately, due to the politics at the time, we had no choice but to move our focus, just purely for the survivability of our company. We had to move everything across to South Korea. And now that we're focused on the South Korean side of things, and we won't take that focus off until we're into production. Unfortunately, from our point of view, Batangas just has to sit and wait. But yeah, we're always interested to hear from other parties if they think there's a way to get that moving. We just don't want to take our prime resources and put it into Batangas, but always interested to hear what other people think could be done.
Thanks, Colin. Going back to the earlier question, is it difficult to bring across to Korea, South Korea, Filipino mining engineers and the like to work on your mine there?
Yeah, it is. The Koreans are, I won't say they're, I don't say they're bloody minded about it, but they certainly have areas of the world where they will accept people for longer, people who can do work, people who can't do work. They have immigration plans, and we have tried to go through some of those. I think that with a concerted effort, we believe that we could probably get out of 200 people, we could probably get maybe 30 people from the Philippines and Malaysia. Malaysia is definitely more their preferred location for foreign workers than the Philippines. But again, I think people find that there haven't been, because there's been no mining, they don't know what the Philippine mining community is capable of. And were the Philippine mining people let in, I think that they would do themselves no harm at all, and get quickly gain a good reputation for operating.
Are there many mining companies operating in South Korea?
As far as we are aware, we are the only foreign mining company that's in operation.
That's for gold. For gold.
Yeah, but there are other companies looking at base metals,
tungsten,
coal mines too.
I see. Okay, here's a question from John Menzies. The Philippines now has a serious economic crisis. Unemployment, I am told, is more than 25%, and the economy has ground to a halt. The mining industry, both exploration and development, has the potential to generate jobs and taxation revenues in the near future. The Philippines has been off the industry radar because of the attitude of government and the Catholic Church to our businesses. what is the view regarding the potential for a change of attitude to the industry? Are any industry groups in the country putting the case of an easing of regulation to the government? Can the Catholic Church opposition be managed in some manner by the government if there is a change in approach to our industry? Rather complex set of questions there.
Yeah.
Anyone wants to take that on?
I guess our attitude is we go where the world wants us or where the universe wants us. And if Philippines don't want us, we'll go somewhere else. And we don't interfere with politics. We don't try and bend people's arms or otherwise. If you don't want us, fine, we'll find somewhere else to go. And that's the attitude of most mining companies. They're very mobile. Unfortunately, for the people and the communities around the mining projects, as John pointed out, are the ones that lose out. They're the ones that don't have jobs. They're the ones that, the government don't really care about by the looks of it. And it's very sad. And I know Charlie and myself and Perry and everyone of us who have been involved with our company, it was with great sorrow to have to made the decision to move out to South Korea. So, but someone else should perhaps try and answer the question that John put there, because it's a very good one. And that's more a question that probably should be put to some government authority, if there's anyone online.
Yeah, okay. I have something from Brad. He says, maybe I could answer that one, Leo. I don't know how we're going to get Brad. Can we get Brad to answer that question? Job, can you put on his mic?
How's that? Am I on?
Brad, is that you?
Yes, it is. How you going, Leo?
Oh, there you
Thanks,
go.
Charles, for your presentation. Also, obviously, I'm in a little bit of a position that I could give a little bit of colour to that question. OceanaGold's still moving forward with its renewal of its FTAA, but that notwithstanding, I've had a number of meetings with DNR, DTI and DOF in recent months, and they all sing the same tune at the moment, and that is that the government wants to give the view that the Philippines is open for business and open for business for mining. I asked whether that transcends to the president, and they say yes, it does. He's changing his tune with respect to that because, as was rightly said earlier, the Philippines is struggling financially, definitely drowning, not waving, and so they need to get some impetus into the economy. And it looks like at long last, being the eternal optimist, that the government's starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. When you looked to some specifics though, some movement around EO 79, the open pit mining ban, the new fiscal regime, all those sorts of items, there's a lack of transaction or traction rather with respect to those. But I was told yesterday by DOF Secretary Dominguez that they are, similar name Leo, maybe you might have heard the same thing, that they are in fact trying to bring that all together and resolve it in the not too distant future, he said. So they are focusing on mining. So maybe fingers crossed, Mount Larbo, Colin might get back on the table in the not too distant future. So there you go.
Did you get a sense of what? Did you get a sense of what the distant future, not too distant future, could look like in terms of a drop dead date?
Look, that's really interesting because we're pushing very hard for our renewal, obviously. So it turned towards focusing on OceanaGold at that point. They do want to do it because they, with respect to us, they're talking end of month, but who knows, right? They are very conscious. They've had a lot of discussions. There is a task force or a technical working group set up to bring it all together because they foresee it as a really big way to assist the economy. So at least they're talking the right talk at the moment. Whether that does turn into any action on the ground or not, Leo, will remain to be seen. So not too distant future was never defined.
Yeah. Yes. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for volunteering your comments.
I thought I did it to you privately. I was doing it tongue in cheek, but you've shamed me.
No. This is all about enlightenment. Okay, I have a comment from Richard Llarenas. Well, two things. He said, how to be part of those mentioned projects, the Batangas, Kochang, and Gubong? I don't know exactly how he wants to be part of it, but maybe you can answer that on two levels. One is investment, and two is, I guess, work.
Charlie?
Well, if you'd like a job, then I suggest you invest £1 million in us, and we can look and see what we can do. I really don't understand the question.
Oh, Richard, Richard just clarified work. How can he work for you in Batangas, Kochang, and Gubong? But maybe I'll ask Richard to say, well, what do you do? Are you a mining engineer, a geologist, an accountant?
Please, not an accountant.
Well, let's wait for him to answer. Okay, I was going to say, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, if you guys were going to compare either the ease of doing mining in the Philippines versus the ease of doing mining in Korea, South Korea, what would each place be in a scale of 1 to 10 in comparison to the other?
Okay. Philippines at the moment, somewhere around 0. Korea, put it around about 6, 7, 7.5. What do you say, Charlie?
Wow.
I think I'm taking the question a little bit differently. You know, we are as yet to go into construction, and therefore, having worked in this industry for 50 years, I'm rather suspect of anybody who tells me it's going to be a walk in the park or a cakewalk, as we said before. So we don't have enough experience, in my view, to say anything other than that Colin's estimation of maybe 6.5, 7 would be correct if the way we have been treated and the way the format of things moving forward is the same. But from, you know, presenting papers and arguing how one would carry out mining to actually doing it, that's 2 different things. So we'd have to wait and see there. As far as working in the Philippines, I'm afraid I'd have to say that for the small mining guys, you know, has been very, very difficult in my estimation. And it goes right back to ownership of the properties and trying to do something with it. So very, very difficult. But actually doing mining in the Philippines, if you've got a group, it's very simple. Everybody knows how to mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Charlie,
yes,
sorry, Leo. I'm also looking at the chat group, and I see 2 very good questions there, which Charlie needs to answer. And that is, what is the typical grade you think are at the Korean mines, and what is your timeline of development until commissioning?
Okay, let's take the second question first. But once we start construction, or once we move forward after COVID, 15 months and we will have gold. Maybe even earlier, but 15 months is what we planned on the outside. In terms of, sorry, gold, what was the first part of the question?
Well, the grades and the timeline.
Grades are typical narrow vein grades. We have not looked at any wide veins in Korea, but narrow grades we've seen for ourselves, anything from 2.5 up to 75, 80 grams per ton. I would say that on average we're looking at around about 6 gram per ton startup.
Okay.
Thanks. Thank you. I got a comment now from the gentleman who asked about how to get involved. He said it was work. I asked him, what type of work do you do? And he says he's a maintenance management professional. So I guess he's asking whether there was any work for him. I don't think there's any work in Batangas at the moment, but how about South Korea?
Maybe in a few months that could be possible. I'd suggest if the gentleman wishes to maybe send his CV to you guys and you could forward it on to us, or if you have our email,
great.
give him the
Great. So, yeah. So Richard, you heard that. So you know what to do. Send your CV to maybe to job to the Philippine Mining Club, and they'll make
Send it
sure.
send it to Kevin at Philippine Mining Club.
Send it to Kevin. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll forward it to you guys.
I see there's
Okay.
also a young lady also asking if we would consider hiring a female mining engineer. We don't mind female, male. Maybe when we get back to Batangas, that would be something worth looking at. But as Charlie pointed out, there are restrictions getting people into South Korea, and you would have to have exceptional skills for us to be able to, I guess, convince the Korean government, immigration, that you are an essential person.
Mm.
Could
But
I
I
ask you
suppose
guys?
okay, go ahead.
Could I just ask a question about? You had Petty Trading and Paramita there, and of course our world famous Perry Rezabel. Are they back here now in the Philippines, or are they there?
No, they're
And
in the Philippines.
and the other thing is, how do they go accessing, getting into Korea, South Korea? Sorry.
Could I suggest that these were short-term visits, Kevin?
So they're over. So they're back here in the Philippines.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They're over long ago.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So does it mean that you have to wait till COVID is over until you can progress?
Right now, if travel restrictions were lifted today, such that I could go to Seoul, then two of us could get there, right? But we also have our mining guys or our mining guy in New Zealand who can't get up to Korea, and we're a bit restricted in what we can do. So, but the moment it opens up, we can get there. We do have a couple of jobs laid on, which as Colin was intimating with the funding, once that's happened, we can put those contracts in place and have them done, and probably be using some technology to see what's going on there every day to make sure it's going the way we want. But it's all going to happen.
So currently the sites are just under care and maintenance. They're just under care and maintenance.
We really don't want to do that. We want to move it along.
But no. Sorry. What I'm trying to ask is there actually people working there now in South Korea, like on the sites, the projects?
On our projects right now, no. There is a visit to site today by some engineers having a look at things for us. But actual physical work at the moment, no.
Okay. All right. So it's like everything, isn't it?
Okay.
It's terrible. Go on,
yeah. Unless there are other questions, we seem to be running out. So Kev, if that was the last question, we could read off the chat box, and is it that at this point we can move on to the next part, as in end the Q&A, and okay. All right. So on that note, oops, there was somebody threw a question in. Oh, it's just a comment. It was really great and most interesting. However, there was no singing, according to John Menzies. All right, we'll bring out the beer. We'll sing. All right. Okay. So anyway, thank you very much, Charles and Colin, for that very interesting presentation. And I must say that hearing about South Korea and what it offers to those who are adventurous and entrepreneurial. I'm so happy that you guys have found that gold mine, and I wish you guys the best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so thank you very much. If this was a live audience, I'd ask my audience to put their hands together and show their appreciation. We have to learn how to do that online.
Well, we could all put our mics on.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Okay, this is the time of day that I have to make announcements once more. Number one, we will be issuing, for those interested, a certificate of attendance to the attendees, and it looks like that on your screen. And please, if you're interested in one, contact Joan Falcutella at Joan, Joan, at PhilippineMiningClub.com. Okay, oh, there it is. Or yeah, send your request to info@PhilippineMiningClub.com. The second piece of information is, again, that Mining Investment Asia Conference, which is taking place in Singapore on November 2 to 4, 2020. So if you're interested in information and wish to register, the link is called mininginvestmentasia.com. Again, mininginvestmentasia.com. And lastly, our speaker for the first Second Chance webinar under the Philippine Infrastructure and Construction Club, or PICC, which is the sister organization of the Philippine Mining Club. That speaker is from the ADB. His name is Mr. Kelly Bird. Mr. Bird is a Philippine country director of the ADB, and he will be presenting ADB's Philippine Program Overview and Infrastructure Program Highlights. Again, he will be presenting on the Philippine Program Overview and Infrastructure Program Highlights of the ADB. This is likely to be well attended, so please reserve your spaces early. We still don't have a date, or do we? We do, it's the 28th,
Yes.
Isn't it? Okay, it's on your screen. 28th of August, 2020. It's a Friday, and it will start at 10 a.m. So
Yeah,
on that
if I
note,
could-
ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Any comments there?
If I could just say something on that. We had to start it at 10 o'clock rather than the usual 2:30 starting time because Mr. Bird will be in New Zealand. So there's a 4-hour difference. So he is going to be joining us all the way from New Zealand, and I think it should be a good presentation. If you don't know what ADB is doing in the Philippines, there is about $6 billion over a 3 or 4 year period, and a lot of it is going into the infrastructure development, including railroads, a new green pathway for EDSA, and a number of other exciting projects. So please join us for that, and we look forward to a good participation. We already have almost 100 people registered, so please register because we only have a maximum of 200 people that we can allow currently. So get your registration.
Can I just add something to that you might realize that our webinars are free to join, and we still have employees that we have to pay. So I don't know. Anyway, there you go. But thank you for that.
Okay, unless there's anything else, anyone? There being none, thank you all for being here with us today. We look forward to your continued support to the Philippine Mining Club and its webinars, as well as to the future webinars of the Philippine Infrastructure and Construction Club. So we'll see you next at that event on August 28th. So everyone, good afternoon, and the bar is open wherever you are.
I'll have a beer.
I know you so well. You know that I can tell the slightest difference in your facial expression. Don't tell me nothing's on your mind. If we're honest, it will all be fine. I'm someone who likes to talk things through. The hardest thing is getting it out of you. I should sit back and give you a break. Let you close your perfect eyes, 'cause there's no need to explain. I know what you wanna say. But just say goodnight if you think that's alright. There's no need to explain. I know that we can make. Can we get up and try to feel okay again?
Okay.
I'm getting too close. You say you love me most. It's hard to trust it even though I want to. Need to get this shit out of my head before I flip this on myself instead. Please come over here. Lay your head right down. Don't make a sound. I hear you loud and clear. There's no need to explain. I know what you wanna say. We could just say goodnight if you think that's alright. There's no need to explain. I know that we can relate. Can we get up and try to feel okay again? Can we get up and try to feel okay again?
Okay.
For now we love each other once I consent. Fun, whether that separation is an event. I'd wait for an hour